my next guest is someone who I've wanted to meet for a really long time now. Say hello to Laura Bell Bundy.
Hello, how
I
are
have
you?
to say her name with a country accent for some reason, because for some odd reason, like, I remember the first time I heard your name, Reba McEntire was like presenting an award or something, I think like the ACMs or the CMAs, and she was like, Laura Bell Bundy. So ever since then, I feel like I need to say your name, like Laura Bell Bundy.
Well, that's what most people from where I'm from, that's how they say it.
Yeah.
Laura Bale.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I became Laura when I moved to New York.
Yeah. So before we go into the fun holiday stuff, I do want to ask you about how your experience on How I Met Your Mother, because I just finished binging it on Hulu. It took me about a month, and I laughed from the second I started to the second I finished. So I wanted to know, tell me a little bit about your experience working on How I Met Your Mother.
Well, so I was cast to play this part, and I hadn't seen a script. I didn't know anything about this character until basically the week of the shooting, where I got the script and found out that Becky was going to be kind of an obnoxious news anchor and was going to be constantly annoying Robin. So it was really fun. It's a great cast. I really enjoyed working with them. And for a multi-camera, it was a little untraditional. Most multi-cameras, you spend a week where you rehearse everything, and then you get script changes and you change things, and then you incorporate them into rehearsals. And then there's like a tech rehearsal, and then there's a full tape night where an audience comes.
Yeah.
Well, How I Met Your Mother doesn't work like that.
Oh.
It doesn't work like that. How I Met Your Mother, you learn your lines, you get invited to blocking, you learn the blocking, then you go back and put your you put your clothing back, your costumes on, and then you come out to set and you shoot.
Yeah.
And you're ready to go. And sometimes you just come to set fully clothed and you rehearse right there and you shoot it right there. So you don't have as much time to get the material in your body, to try new things over a course of days. And the show I did anger management films like that too. So it's kind of like, hey, we're going to do this today. And you're going to stand here and like learn it in 5 minutes. And we're filming it now. So that's kind of what it was like. But the cast they're such pros. And they knock things out so quickly, and that's such a fun show. I love all the flashbacks and the fun elements, and people were like, are you the mother? And I'm like, pretty sure I'm not the mother. They're not going to make this boats girl the mother.
Yeah.
Hashtag
boats. Yeah. When you were on set, how many times did you see Neil Patrick Harris not in a suit? Was he always in a suit? Because Barney Stinson, Swarley, aka, is always wearing a suit. Hashtag suit up. So
I'm trying to think about it. I think he was in a suit every time I was there. I think I only ever had one scene with him, which was the final episode I was in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the only time. I mean, I've known him for years because of musical theater and being connected with him in that way, and seeing him at awards shows, which he also was in a suit.
Yeah.
And then years before, I actually used to go to his house for game nights. This was even before I did Hairspray. But yeah, so but I don't think I actually think I always saw him in a suit. I don't remember anything else.
Yes. Every time I have a chance to make a reference to that TV show, I do it. Like if I say legendary, I'll say legend, wait for it, dairy. Or I'll just look at myself and go, cell 5. Just because of how much I fell in love with that show. Was everybody else cool, like Allison and Jason and Josh and Kobe?
Yeah, it was a great cast. Really great people. They had a great rhythm with each other. They were very kind to me. Very kind. Yeah.
Because you had a lot of scenes with Kobe.
Yeah, I did. And Josh too.
Yeah.
I think that I ended up befriending Josh more. Like we kind of became buddies through the process. And yeah, I did. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
For them, it's like old hat. They go to set, they do their thing, they go back. They're parents.
Yeah.
They have spouses. They have other things going on that they deal with in their dressing room.
Yeah. I didn't know that Taran Killam looked so familiar to me, but before I knew he was married to Kobe.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, how do I know this guy? Where do I know him from? And then my best friend who's obsessed with SNL was like, Jamie, you've seen him on SNL. I'm like, oh, that's how I know who he is. And I didn't know that Allison's husband was the guy who played Sandy Rivers.
Yep.
I just found that out like a week after I finished the show.
It's amazing the things you find out. All of the extra side stuff in the show, or how many people have worked together before doing the show.
Mm-hmm.
And every TV show is like that. Like, oh, did you know that so-and-so's wife is or brother is this part,
Yeah. Like when you see Neil Patrick Harris hitting on a girl and David Burka standing right there in the scene.
Yeah. I didn't know about that. That's
that is classic. That part of the show, that's what I was cracking up watching that. So in addition to being on one of my new favorite shows, How I Met Your Mother, you did a lot of musical theater. 2 shows that really stand out are Hairspray and Legally Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
They actually did Legally Blonde at my high school my senior year. I went and saw it. I didn't go to it because I had a lot going on my senior year. But I did go see it, and it was awesome. And I kind of pictured you on stage, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, you did? While you watched someone else do the show?
I kind of pictured you playing Elle Woods. So did Reese Witherspoon was there like did you kind of study her version of Elle Woods to try to find your own?
No, actually, I had seen the movie before. And then once I was cast, which was early on in the development of the show, the director and choreographer, Jerry Mitchell, said, don't ever watch the movie again. I want you to make this role your own. So for me, it was just about figuring out who Elle Woods really was on the inside. Mm-hmm. And what made her who she is. And then like becoming that person and responding to what's going on in her life and reacting to that. Responding to the breakups, and then getting the idea to go to Harvard, and then responding to everything going on there. So it really was, as I definitely created my version of her, I kind of then just stuck with it and proceeded forward as her.
Oh yeah. I was on a Zoom with Teal Wicks earlier today, and we started singing So Much Better. Like out of the blue, she's like, I told her, I'm interviewing Laura Bell Bundy later. She's like, I am so much better than I've been before. Like we just started singing it. But also Hairspray. We got to talk Hairspray because I have spoken with a few Hairspray, another Hairspray cast member not from the OG cast like you, but I have spoken with Diana DeGarmo, who's like one of my like interviewing buddies. So you played Amber, which is she's kind of an evil human being. So is it challenging playing an evil human being, or is it more fun than playing the protagonist?
No, it is not a challenge for me. For some reason, I find it really delicious to play the villain, or the bitch, if you will.
I was about to say the bitch, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I think what it is it's about, I think, becoming a character that everyone loves to hate.
Mm-hmm.
And making that character genuinely funny.
Yeah.
And when you can make a character genuinely funny, then the audience enjoys the show with them and loves to hate them. And so with Hairspray, it was kind of about like just being ridiculous, like, and also creating like, what makes this person the way they are, and that it's insecurity, right? It's all stemming from insecurity. It's all coming from the fact that she's afraid not to be the best, and that she has a heightened sense of herself, and that her mom has contributed to giving her a heightened sense of herself, and what her belief system is, that she's a bigot, and why. So all of that backstory had to be done anyway, but then, you know, and then it's just silly fun.
Yeah, I feel like Hairspray specifically is like one of those shows where like there's a hidden like actual like real life message in the show that you somewhat discover way after you see it.
Like what?
Like what you just said about like feeling insecure. Like I never thought of it like that.
Well, you know, all characters that are villains are not villains just because they were born that way. People, we become the best or worst versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
Depending on what we're afraid of and what brings love and joy into our lives. And, you know, if you see any, like, the Joker, like if you see that, you know, how that, you know, that character was just a horrible villain, how that character came to be and wasn't always a horrible person, was made fun of, was bullied, and then it all kind of, so I think you have to approach a character like that to make them grounded in reality and to keep them truthful, because no human being is just born horrible. They have a series of events in their lives that compound and give them a certain fear that makes them do a certain thing. We're all capable of anything. This is what I know.
Yeah. Amen, sister. Amen. So what have been some of your, out of like Legally Blonde and Hairspray, which you're like mostly known for, what are some of your favorite musical numbers that you got to partake in both of those shows?
Oh, well, you know, I mean, everything with Hairspray was so fun. And what you may not know is that even if I wasn't in a number, I was often singing in the stage, even though I was Amber Von Tussle. Yeah. Because when we developed the show, we learned all the songs. All of the kids in the show learned all the songs to sing them for the readings and the workshops. And, and so I knew them, but Nicest Kids in the Town was such a fun number because we were like at the height of energy. I mean, it was like, we came out like a cannon, and seeing how high I could jump every night in my first entrance was always a challenge, and how hard we could stick these moves and how much energy we could give it was always fun. And I always had fun during You Can't Stop the Beat, when I'm basically under a chair kicking and screaming and having my own show going on the side of the stage. So that was always fun for me. But I love that show so much. And I think the feeling with Legally Blonde is I did the show so many times and for so long, that I would have these periods where What You Want was my favorite number. And then So Much Better was my favorite number. And then Ben and Staff was my favorite number, because there was always like some fun stuff going on with cast members. So it always evolved. It always changed. I always loved that show. I always loved that show. I will tell you, my least favorite song from Legally Blonde is Oh My God, You Guys.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the most well-known, because I think, it's a brilliant, brilliant song. It gives energy to the show right away, but I also think it's the most annoying song in the show.
Yeah, after a while, it gets a little, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah, it's like a little grating on the ears. But all the other songs, I'm like, I could listen to these forever.
Like this, talk holidays a little bit. So this is the holiday special. Tell me a little bit about what you would do for the holidays growing up.
Well, I'm from Kentucky, so when my grandparents were alive, I would go over to their house on Christmas Eve, and my cousins would be there, and I'd go over with my parents, and my aunts and uncles would come over, and we would do our gift exchange. And we would have dinner, and there would be like ham and potato salad and all these different things, like a fruit tray and deviled eggs, and everybody would bring different things, and they put them out on the table, and we would have dinner, and then we would open up gifts. And what was funny is I was the first grandchild.
Oh, me too. I'm both sides.
I'm the youngest on one side. Like everyone was an adult when I was born on my dad's side. But then on my mom's side, I was the oldest. So, and those were the grandparents that I went to their house every year. So at first it was just me, and then it became all my other cousins. And now it's massive. It's like cousins and their husbands and their wives and their kids and just like all this stuff. And now there's like 50 people cramming into a house when before it was just 5. So, but it was always the most fun when it was my aunts and uncles and cousins, and it was like small enough so that we could all be in the same room and even enjoy each other. But big enough so that it was all the kids, and it was always, there was gifts and there was laughter. And then after we got a little older, we started doing like a dirty Santa gift.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Where like it was like a white elephant, but a dirty kind. And then my grandparents, who were like in their 80s, would join us. And
oh my God.
Grandfather opened up a blow up doll once, and his reaction to it. I mean, I laughed so hard. I couldn't stop laughing. I think I might've peed a little.
Oh my God.
But so that was Christmas. And then I would go home at night. And as a kid, I'd go back to my own home. And then we would have our just Christmas with my mom and dad. And sometimes my sisters would be there because they were quite a bit older than me.
Yeah.
And sometimes they weren't there. But, and then I had a couple Christmases where I was doing Radio City Music Hall's Christmas Spectacular.
Ooh.
And I was 9. That was my first professional show.
Oh my God.
I ever did. I was 9 and 10 years old when I did that show for 2 years. And so we actually did shows on Christmas.
Yeah.
So sometimes we would have Christmas Eve off, sometimes not. And if we had Christmas Eve off, my parents and I would go to a nice fancy dinner, and I would get to open up one gift. And then the next day we would have Santa and a gift exchange and go to church. And then I'd go do 3 shows.
Yeah.
It was just the craziest thing. And then, for Legally Blonde, I'm not sure we had a show on Christmas, but for Hairspray, we did have a show on Christmas. But we didn't have a show on Christmas Eve. So what did I do? I flew to Kentucky so that I could have Christmas Eve with my family. Ooh. And then I decided, you know what, I'll leave the next day, and I'll get to New York in time to do my show on Christmas night. Well, it was a massive snowstorm, and I'm on the plane from Cincinnati to New York.
Oh my God.
And we are circling and circling and circling Newark Airport, circling and circling and circling. And we are not landing, and they are running out of fuel, and they have to land the plane in Philadelphia at 6 p.m. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it in to the show. Because once they land in Philadelphia at 6 p.m., I've then got to figure out how I'm going to make it to New York City. And I'm not going to make it till like 9:30.
Oh my God.
So I had to call the stage manager and say, I'm going to miss the show. And I had never missed a show. We had been doing the show for almost 6 months, and I had never called in sick.
Oh my God.
And so my understudy, who was a woman who was in the show, she actually played Luann most of the time, who was a great friend of mine, Katie Leonard, who I call Kooks, she went on. And so by the time I got there, I got into the city, I just went to the theater because I wanted to see her do this show. So I just saw her do the end of the show, and I like screamed and clapped and brought her flowers at the end. But yeah, it was like, I was so annoyed because here's the other thing. I could have stayed in Kentucky for Christmas, but I was stuck on a plane. I mean, I wasn't doing my show anyway.
Yeah, you wanted to have a little perfect attendance record for the show.
Yeah, but so yeah, there's when you're doing a Broadway show, you really do kind of sacrifice your holidays. There's almost always a show around Christmas or during Thanksgiving weekend and on the weekends. And so you don't really get to have those things. And I think after I'd had a couple of years where I missed out on Christmas, because when I was doing Wicked, I also missed Christmas.
Yeah.
I really sort of cherished the times that I had with my family.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And now that you have a child of your own, have you started to create like any Christmas traditions or anything?
Well, so we're, he's 18 months. So this will be his
Yeah.
second Christmas, and it's COVID. So last year we went to Kentucky, and we went for the earlier part of the holiday. So I'd say like the 20th to the 23rd.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
the
yeah.
18th to the 23rd, I was there.
Yeah.
And then my mom and my stepdad and Huck, we all flew to California together.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then we did Christmas Eve and Christmas in LA.
Ah.
So we wanted to begin the tradition of having Huck be in his home for Christmas.
Mhm.
And the unfortunate part is I'm not going to be able to fly home for Christmas or bring him there. But when things normalize, I think the plan will always be we go to Kentucky for a few days before Christmas, and then
Yeah.
because a lot of now all of us cousins, we used to do Christmas Eve, but now that everybody's married and has kids and is married to people who have other traditions, we've decided to make celebrating Christmas like the 22nd. So we can
Yeah,
go
that's
and we can
smart.
have it done early, and then
That's really smart.
kind of go do our thing, with our kids on the other
Yeah.
day. But there is something kind of sad about that when you get older and Christmas as you know it is different than it ever was before. And there is a part of me that's very sad about that.
Yeah.
And I really miss my grandparents a lot on Christmas. Always, always now will feel like something's missing.
Mhm. Totally. Totally. I totally get that. So one thing I do want to ask you is you had COVID back in March, April. Were you scared?
Yeah, I think, it's really, at the time when I had it, there wasn't as much information about it as we have now. There
Right.
weren't as many cases to go, okay, what were your symptoms? And what were your symptoms? And was about all I was hearing was people are dying, they're on ventilators. If you can't breathe, you could have fibrosis on the lungs, which is irreversible. So
Mhm.
for me, I'm thinking I'm a singer. If I get fibrosis on my lungs and then that is irreversible, what is that going to do
Yeah.
for me? I didn't think I was going to die, but there was always that case. And I was born with a pre-existing heart condition. And there was all of these things about if you have any sort of heart conditions that COVID can be particularly detrimental. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. But so what happened though is that I had symptoms that were like coming and going, and I didn't know if they were symptoms. So I got like a massive, massive headache
Yeah.
that I couldn't kick one day. And then I guess like 24 hours later, I started to have a little sore throat. And that
Yeah.
was like right at the beginning of the quarantine. So I'm at home and I'm like, I got a little bit of sore throat. That's weird. Is this COVID? I don't know. And then a couple days later, I started to have tightness in the chest, and I'm like, this is weird. Then it went away. It totally went away. The sore throat went away. I didn't have a headache. I didn't have a shortness of breath. And then like 24 hours, the shortness of breath kind of came back. And then
Oh
the
gosh.
sore throat kind of, and then I had chills, and all of them were like ice. I did like a TikTok about my symptoms.
Yeah.
It was like coming in waves.
Oh
And then
wow.
I got this crazy back pain. So I was like, I don't know if I have COVID or if I just think I have COVID because that's all anybody's talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
But my husband was like, you should call your doctor and see if they've got tests. Now, at the time, no one had tests. It was a privilege to be able to get a test.
Oh
So
yeah.
when I called my doctor's office, they said, we have tests. And because you have a pre-existing heart condition, we'll give you one.
Ah,
So I
that's
was like, okay. So I went and got tested. So that the day I got tested was a week after I had had symptoms. And then I didn't get my test results till 5 days after that. So it was 12 days. And then I found out I have COVID, but I probably don't have COVID anymore.
oh my God.
So I'm telling you this because when I found out I had COVID, I was like, oh my God, I have COVID. And I started to get scared.
Mhm.
And I started to think of the worst possible scenarios.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, I've had COVID now for like almost 12 days.
Yeah.
So it actually is probably not going to get much worse than it's already been.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this weird thing. Like if you had told me day one I have COVID and I hadn't had any of these symptoms and they had, you know, I would have been freaking out.
Oh yeah.
Freaking out. And I ended up getting, I wanted to get a chest x-ray just to make sure of that, the fibrosis, to make sure there wasn't anything going on, but no one would do an x-ray with me at any sort of imaging facility. I had to go to the emergency room. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go to the emergency room. It's going to be a mess. I went to the emergency room. Not a soul was in the waiting room. Not a soul, because people were afraid to go to the hospital. Listen, if the beginning of COVID, if you had twisted your ankle and you thought you broke it, you're like, I'm fine. I'm not going to go to the hospital. I'm just going to sit here. I don't want to get COVID. So it's like, no one was going.
Yeah.
And then when you got there and you said, hey, I've tested positive for COVID, they got you right in a room because they did not want you around anybody.
Oh yeah.
So I've never been admitted to a hospital quicker in my life. And then I got the x-ray and everything was fine. And they ended up, but what happened was at that point, that had been 3 weeks since I had had my first symptom. And I was actually having some issues breathing, and I was having some crazy back pain. And what they said is, while you're no longer contagious and there's like really no virus present in your body, you have inflammation everywhere for how hard your body has worked fighting off the virus. So there's a lot of inflammation in the body. And the inflammation can make you feel like you're tight in your lungs and you have back pain, because that's essentially like the way arthritis is, just water and fluid. So that was weird.
Yeah, I was like the most terrifying part of your 2020, but at the same time,
it was just an interesting experience to have. Like, it was terrifying. And it was at the beginning, and I felt like I needed to also let other people know about my experience so they could know that not all experiences end on a ventilator in the hospital.
Yeah.
But I also recognized that I was really fortunate.
Yeah.
And I had some long-term effects from it, you know, that I don't feel anymore, but it was about 3 months before I felt normal again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So on a happier note, describe your 2020 for me in one word, and what you hope your 2021 will be like in one word.
I think 2020 has been transformative.
Yeah.
And I hope that 2021 feels like an ascension. That like the dust and the cloud, you know, the dust is settled and the clouds open and we can see the sunshine, and we can recognize what we've learned with some real gratitude and feel like there's some freedom. That we're free of something.
Yeah.
And it's not just being free of COVID, but free of maybe some old ways of thinking that we have had collectively, whether that be about racism or what we feel is right or wrong, or healthcare, or the way we're living our lives. You know, I think a lot of people, if you're an adult and you've had this time to reflect upon what it is you're doing with your life, and if you like your career, and if you like who you're living with, if you like who you're stuck in the house with, you know, I think it's just been a very transformative time, and hopefully we can evolve from that in the next year.
I hope so too. So once again, this is Laura Bell Bundy.